I want to talk with you this morning about something that probably everybody wants, but for some reason, not everybody has. I want to talk with you this morning about financial freedom. Everybody wants to be financially free, but I wonder how many of us really are. A caterer wrote a note to a good friend of his describing how business was booming. I mean, he was covered up with banquets and parties to cater. And then he wrote to his friend, "Business is terrific. I now have enough money to last me for the rest of my life, as long as I die next Tuesday." Financial freedom. We want it. But what is it? I actually searched for a definition and couldn't really find one, so I kind of tinkered with it. I thought, okay, financial freedom is that having all the money I want. Well, that's not biblical. Could it be having enough money to pay all my bills? That doesn't seem to go far enough. How about financial freedom? Is that when I'm out of debt? Well, not all debt is bad. So what is financial freedom? I came up with this definition. It's in your sermon notes. Financial freedom: to joyfully and peacefully use what God has given me to meet my needs and or the needs of my family. Now, I've had periods in my life where I had financial freedom according to this definition. A lot more periods where I was actually pursuing it. So it seems to me financial freedom is both a destination and a journey. And I suspect it's a journey that we are going to be traveling as long as we're walking on this old earth. So financial freedom, how do we get it? Well, financial freedom requires a couple things. First of all, it requires healthy goals. Healthy goals. In every endeavor, goals are so important. They not only determine our destination, where we're headed, but they also, to a great extent, determine how we will get there. And it is so important at every stage of our lives that we have healthy goals. Toward the end of his life, a successful businessman said, "I spent my life climbing the ladder of success only to discover it was leaning against the wrong house." And Lee Iacocca, the legendary savior of Chrysler Motor Company, once said, "When you get to the top, there's nothing there. There's nothing there." We need healthy goals if we're going to be financially free. So I want to suggest 3 biblical goals, and my personal prejudice is that if they're biblical goals, they're healthy goals. First biblical goal: accept what God has given you. Accept what God has given you. When Moses was getting the people ready to go into the land of Canaan, that God was going to give them the land of Canaan, he preached Deuteronomy. The name means second law. Deuteronomy means second. To get them ready. And one of the things he was trying to get them to understand is God was going to give them the land, that God was providing it. And that was important because according to verse 17 of Deuteronomy 8, "Otherwise you may say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand make me this wealth. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who is giving you power to make wealth, that He may confirm His covenant, which He swore to your fathers, as it is to this day." And then I love Proverbs 10:22. "It is the blessing of the Lord that makes rich, and He adds no sorrow to it." God gives us the ability to work, the gifts and the talents to be successful. He gives us the health to be able to work. And He is the one that gives us the ability to make money. Some people have the gift of making money. Everything they touch turns to gold. Other people want to make that kind of money. And Paul warned that many people pursuing wealth destroy their lives in the process. God gives some people the ability to make this amount of money, others that amount of money. And we need to accept what God has given us. Now, that may mean that your best friend may drive a nicer car than you do. May mean that she takes nicer vacations than you get to take, lives in a bigger house, does more cool stuff. It's okay. Or it should be okay. But there's something about American culture that drives us to always want more, right? We always have to have more. We're not satisfied with what we have. That's why, according to a Pew Research study from 2018, 54% of Americans say they spend more each year than they make. Now, I suspect that percentage is actually a lot higher because there are so many Americans who don't pay attention and they don't know they're spending more than they make. Now, according to MoneyGeek.com, in 2020, the average credit card holder owes $5,934. That's a big debt. And so many of them are just paying the minimum each month. And if you pay the minimum on that kind of debt, you'll never pay it off. But you'll be paying a boatload of interest. Part of accepting wealth and being financially free is accepting that God has made us to make a certain amount of money, and therefore we shouldn't spend more than we make. That's contentment, right? And remember, contentment is not having what you want. Contentment is wanting what you have. So first, biblical goal, accept what God's given you. The second one, spend obediently what God has given you. God expects us to meet our financial obligations, even if the president says he can cancel student loan debt to the tune of $400 billion. God expects us to pay our obligations. And in Scripture, there's actually a structure, an order of the obligations God expects us to pay. The first one is the tithe. If you're not familiar, the tithe is determined means 10% of our income. We give a tenth of our income to the Lord, basically to say to the Lord, hey, I understand you own it all, and you're only asking for a tenth. Contrasted with the government, who thinks that it owns it all, and asks for 20%. That comes to taxes, and the Bible does say we are to pay our taxes 20% on average of our income. Now, if God has given you the gift of making money, that percentage may be a bit higher. You may not be aware of this, but our government just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is not going to reduce inflation. It is, however, going to raise everybody's taxes. And involved in that was money for 87,000 more IRS agents. Now, that bill was passed unanimously by one party and voted against by the other party. You do your own homework to find out who was for raising our taxes in a recession and who wasn't. You go check it out if you're interested. Tithe, taxes. Thirdly, God expects us savings. He expects us to save. And financial planners suggest 10% of our income to save. Proverbs 6:6-8. I wanted to read it from the New Living Translation. This is a very famous parable. Take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. The older translations call that you sluggard. Learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. God expects us to save. Now, there used to be a proverb among Americans that we should save for a rainy day. People used to talk about having a rainy day fund. Trust me, it's going to rain. If your refrigerator goes out tomorrow, that's going to be $2,000 off the top. If your car breaks down, I recently had to put $3,200 into my Camaro because it developed a vibration. Nobody is quite sure how that happened. When these emergencies happen, if we don't have savings to cover them, guess what? We slide deeper into debt. Now, here's the bad news. 21% of Americans save nothing. And another 20% say they save 5% or less. 4 in 10 Americans are virtually not saving at all. So is it any wonder that they're sliding into debt? One more financial obligation that the Bible stresses, and it's based on the proverb of the ants, and that's retirement. We're all going to retire. If you think you're going to be able to live on Social Security, you probably could pull it off, but it isn't going to be any fun. We need to invest in retirement. Most of us are getting pretty close to that. Financial planners suggest 10% of our income, and you need to start early for it to grow, and you need to pray that we don't go into a recession. Oh, shucks, we're going into a recession. Oh, well. One reason Americans don't tithe, one reason why Americans don't save is they can't live on 50% of their income. I mean, if you add up those percentages, that's 50%. And we haven't even started talking about bills yet, right? Now, that means that a lot of Americans are spending more than they make. And Christians are in the same boat, okay? Now, if you're a Jesus follower, you are aware that Jesus said, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things you need will be added to you, Matthew 6:33. Jesus promises to meet our needs. So if we're spending more than God has given us to spend, we just might be buying things Jesus doesn't think we need. Think on that a while. That one keeps me up nights. Third healthy goal: stop spending when the extra cash is gone. Stop spending when the extra cash is gone. Proverbs 22:7. I've never memorized this. I'm not sure why, but I'm very much familiar with it. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower becomes the lender's slave. If I owe, what's the old song? I owe, so off to work I go, and I won't be able to retire because I owe. Okay, so I am the lender's slave, right? But I want to be financially free. You know, Americans love credit cards because credit cards are easy. We want something and we don't know if we can afford it or not, so we slap the credit card down and we get it. Did you know that studies have found that people who use credit cards instead of cash spend between 12 and 18% more than those who just use cash? Because it's so easy. 69% of all bankruptcies are due to credit card debt. It's a scourge. It's a problem. And we're in a recession. That means interest rates are going up. That means the interest rates on our unsecured credit card debt are going to be going up too, 25%, 30%. So how do we avoid the debt trap? How do we avoid becoming the lender's slave? Stop spending when the extra cash is gone. You say, Ray, what are you talking about, extra cash? Use the formula in your sermon notes. I wish I had had this when Arlene and I first got married. Total income minus the tithe, minus taxes, minus savings, minus retirement, minus monthly bills equals the extra cash. That's the money that you can use on the negotiables. Everything else goes to pay all of our obligations, all of our required expenses. The extra cash is what you have to spend. For years in our marriage, when Arlene and I wanted to buy something, one of us would inevitably say, can we afford this? And the other person would say, I don't know, maybe. And then out came the credit card. And sure enough, we slid deeper into debt. The problem was, we didn't know how much money we had after all of the non-negotiables were funded. Now we do. Now we do. Now you may be thinking, Ray, I don't use cash, I use a debit card. And that's okay, but it does complicate it for you. You may also do online banking, which is also very efficient, but it makes this problem of spending more than we make a little bit bigger. You need to be careful every time you use that debit card to list your debit in your online account. And you need to keep track of when that extra cash is gone and stop debiting. Okay? When I was growing up, my parents often said to me, "Ray, act your age. Act your age." Now that we're grown, folks, we should act our wage. We should act our wage. And we act our wage when we set and keep healthy financial goals. Healthy goals. Secondly, for financial freedom, hard work. Hard work. I love Proverbs 10:4-5, and I think it's the Contemporary English Version translation. It's the clearest one. Laziness leads to poverty. Hard work makes you rich. At harvest season, it's smart to work hard, but stupid to sleep. You know, some folks are in financial trouble because they don't work hard. We're in a recession. People are dancing about in the media, but 2/4 of our economy shrinking by definition is a recession. We're in a recession. Interest rates are going to go up. Businesses are going to start downsizing. So now, who do you think the boss is going to let go first? The hard worker who's there early, gives it her best, always goes the second mile, or the lazy dude who's just doing enough to get by? In a recession, it's a good idea to work hard and to make yourself indispensable. So work hard on the job. Secondly, though, work hard on your plan. Now, if you're retired, working hard on your job may not apply to you. But if you're retired, working hard on your plan may be more important than those who are not retired. Proverbs 27:23 and 24, one of my favorite passages of Scripture. Know well the condition of your flocks, and pay attention to your herds. For wealth is not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. Do you know the condition of your finances? Do you know it well? We need a spending plan. There's an old saying, those who fail to plan to fail. You may never get around to developing a plan. You didn't choose not to have a plan, you just didn't get one. Well, you planned to fail financially. If we hope to be financially free, we need a spending plan, sometimes called a budget. And I know, a budget is a dirty word. It's a plot. It's a scam by one member of the family to keep everybody else from spending any money. No. A budget. I love John Maxwell, pastor, leadership guru, was fond of saying, a budget is people telling their money where to go, rather than wondering where it went. If you get to the end of the money and there's more month left, and you stand there going, shucks, where'd the money go? You don't have a plan. So you plan to fail. So how do we get a spending plan? Well, let me make a couple of suggestions. Try to be as practical as possible. Step one, when the bills come in, and they always do, don't they? Put them in a file folder. Someplace where that folder always is. Where you know where it is. And I'm speaking from experience here. In the early days of our marriage, the bills would come in and we'd leave it here, we'd leave it over there. And then when we finally got around to paying the bills, we paid the ones we could find and didn't know that we maybe hadn't paid the bill till the next month when it came in complete with a late fee. Okay. So have a folder. Put it in the folder. Now I know for some of you this is, gosh, Ray, you're going back to budgeting 101. I get that. But given the financial situation of most Americans, it's kind of where I got to start. In my folder, there's actually a book. It's an old school grade book where I have all my monthly expenses listed with the due dates and the average amounts. And when I pay my bills, mark them off. So I always know the bills are paid. One other suggestion for step one, pick a day or maybe 2 days. Most folks can pay their bills around the 15th or the 30th. We're able to do ours at the end of the month. Pick a day, put it on your cell phone, in the calendar, put an alert there, because life gets busy and we forget to take care of our flocks and herds. I mean, even today, I've been doing this for a bazillion years. Life gets busy and suddenly I'll wake up, it's the 1st or 2nd of the month, and I realize, whoops, I forgot to pay the bills last week. Okay. Step two, know your income and expenses. Total up your total income. Total up all of the non-negotiables, the expenses that are paid every month. We have to make sure that we put enough money in the checkbook to cover all the non-negotiables. The money that's left is what we spend on a weekly or daily basis. And I recommend using your checkbook to pay the bills and spend cash for everything else. We didn't do that in our early days, and so we had all of our non-negotiables. We needed something, write a check for it. Then we come to the end of the month and there's not enough money to pay the bills. Oops. Okay? Now, we're big Dave Ramsey fans, so we have envelopes for our cash that's left over after the non-negotiables. Erlene gets one each week. In it is her mad money and the grocery money. I get one each week. In it is my mad money and the gasoline money for both cars. Then we have a third envelope that's labeled extra cash. That's for small emergencies or fun. Okay? You say, but Ray, I don't use cash, I use a debit card. Tell you a story. My kids don't use cash and they're very proud that they use their debit card. So they're on their way to visit Brandon's family in New York somewhere, and they come to a toll road. And they have to have cash. That's only like $5. They don't even have $5 in their pocket. They literally had to pull over to the side of the road, get out the suitcase, dig into the suitcase to get cash to get through the toll road. I love that story because they've given me down the road about using cash and so that's the search around. Anyway, okay. But if you use a debit card, and that's the going thing now, you just have to keep up with it. And you got to make sure that when that extra cash is gone, you stop debiting. Now, one of the things we did that helped us a lot in the early days, once we started getting a handle on things, we had 2 checkbooks. One for our daily stuff and one for the bills. So we always had enough money in the one for the bills because we weren't writing anything else out of that check. These days, we just use cash and one check. The important thing is, know how much extra cash you have after all the non-negotiables are covered. And when that's gone, stop spending, or you will slide into debt. Oh, I pay off my credit cards every month. Do you really? Studies have shown the majority of Americans don't. And if you're using your credit card because you're out of extra cash and you don't have the money to pay cash, then guess what? You don't have the money to pay off your credit card at the end of the month. Husband and wife are trying to figure out their spending plan for the next month. The current month had been a bummer. I don't know, maybe the refrigerator had gone out, but they had this huge expense that wasn't budgeted. So this next month was going to be really tight. And so the wife said to the husband, as they're trying to put together their plan, she said, okay, let's get back to the basics. Food, shelter, clothing, right? And then she said, choose any 2 of the 3. Short month. Need food. Need shelter. May not need a new shirt. May not need new slacks. May not need to get your nails done. May not need to buy something for your car. Stop spending when the extra cash is gone. Now, I love Dave Ramsey's approach to financial freedom. I've read several other authors, and they tend to be a little, there's sticks in the mud, most of them. Ramsey believes one of the purposes of money is to have fun. I like that. He says, just make sure all of your obligations are paid, and whatever's left, spend every dime. Have fun, go to movies, go out, buy stuff. Just don't spend more than you have. Jeff, 28, and Tara, 29, told this story in Dave Ramsey's best-selling book. I highly recommend it, The Total Money Makeover. I've leaned a good bit on his principles because Arlene and I have been using them now for about 15 years, I think. Jeff said, 18 months ago, my wife and I were newlyweds with $37,000 in debt. We owed about $8,000 on our credit cards and the rest on brand new cars. We thought we were successful. We were making about $52,000 a year. Really successful on $52K? And had just purchased our first home. We'd been a bit uncomfortable with the new home costs and how much of our money was going out versus how much was coming in. But it was the American way. I mean, everybody has a house payment, right? We could also add, everybody has credit card debt, right? Everybody has 1 car payment, 2 car payments, 3 car payments. We're just keeping up with the Joneses, right? Dave Ramsey loves to say, why are you keeping up with the Joneses? The Joneses are broke. Well, Jeff and Tara began to find ways to reduce their debt, reduce their monthly expenses, and increase their income. Ramsey suggests, on top of everything we've talked about, he suggests to sell everything you don't need. Sell everything. Sell so much the kids get nervous. And then he recommends taking a second job. And if you can do it, a third job to get out of debt. Well, Jeff said, I sold my new pickup, there's 1 car payment gone, plus my hot rod, another car payment gone. My hot rod I've been working on, and bought a $1,500 car. Paid cash. My wife picked up some extra hours at her second job, and I changed jobs completely to raise our income. Laziness leads to poverty. Hard work makes you rich. We no longer use credit cards, and we don't buy or do anything unless we can pay cash for it. Even though we raised our income, we kept the less expensive of the 2 cars, the wife's car. I don't miss the hot rod. Well, not much. And my $1,500 car is as reliable as the new one my wife drives. In 4 months, we will be completely debt-free except for the house. Jeff and Tara found financial freedom. Let's pray. Father, I wish it were easier being financially free. We live in a culture that teaches us discontentment, not contentment. We live in a culture, Father, that says debt is the instant answer to all problems. And we think that by having stuff, we'll have happiness. It's just not so. Help us, God, to get a grip on financial freedom. Hopefully, this is just review for most of the folks here today. Hopefully that we don't have a lot of people who are slaves to the lender, who come to the end of the month and wonder where the money went. But odds are, because we've all been there, there's some folks that need to get a hold of their finances. I pray for them, God, that you help them to do it. I pray for Arlene and me that you help us to hang on to it as well. It is a never-ending challenge to keep up with our flocks and herds. Help us to do it, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Invitation is simple. Wherever you are on the journey to financial freedom, your goal should be to pay your obligations, and to stop spending when the money's gone. Now, I could have told a story this morning. Ramsey tells stories of people that buy their houses debt-free, and I'm always impressed by that. I'm not sure how realistic that is. Some debt is good, but my goodness, if we can't tithe because we're spending all of our extra cash on our credit card debt, God stands up there and goes, we can't help our kids or help the hungry or the homeless because we're sending all of our money on our credit card debt. And God stands up there and goes, we need to be financially free. And I suspect you know what you need. It takes strength. And so the question is, where do we find the strength? We find the strength by waiting on the Lord, doing things in His timing, trusting in His provision, doing it His way, financially free, His way. Let's stand together and sing, Everlasting God.